There are a lot of developer paths out there. There's front end and there's back end. I chose the front end route. There's so many job description and names, it's kind of hard to compare. There's front end developers, front end designers, there is back end engineers, data scientists, there are DevOps engineers. So many paths because technology keeps changing. So by the time you actually get to maybe this video, there were probably 3 or 4 more titles already created. But I'll give you some insight into the path I chose and how you can get started. The front end is referring to the client side or the browser where you're interacting with data. You're typing in inputs, clicking a picture, or basically looking up your next delivery on your favorite delivery app. We'll start with HTML. HTML is hypertext markup language. HTML is basically a structure of your site, how your site is framed. So let's think about like a car. If you're thinking about a car, HTML is basically the chassis, the body of the system, how the structure is going to be held up and what supports everything. Websites contain content, and HTML explains how to display the content. I'll give you an example. When you go to a news site, there are usually a heading and a paragraph tag. HTML is how you call out those elements. For example, a heading would be something called an H1 tag, and a paragraph on a body would be called a paragraph would be called a P tag. HTML is basically dictating where and how this content is structured, and it's something you're going to really need to know to pick up in order to be a successful front-end web developer. The next thing you're going to want to pick up is something called cascading style sheets, or CSS for short. Going back to the car analogy, if you're thinking about HTML as the frame of the car, the chassis, then CSS would essentially be the paint of the car. It also has to do with the user experience. When you're thinking about car, you have a different experience driving a Toyota Camry than you do a Lamborghini. The CSS, the experience around it, is what differentiates the two applications, if you will, and creates a brand, a feeling that separates it from all of its other competitors. CSS has to deal with how styles are displayed on the page, what the color is, how far the padding is from each other. Are edges rounded or are they squared? CSS dictates each and every one of these properties, and something that really helps elevate your user experience. And basically, if you take it all away, you're not going to want to interact with that site. If you want to do a test, try disabling CSS or going back into the Wayback Machine and looking what sites looked like when we didn't have access to all these great CSS tools. You'll notice a difference, and most likely you'll notice you might have not even visited a site back in the day because of how it was presented. So CSS, even though it's looked down upon, is a very, very significant skill for front-end developers. Last but not least is JavaScript. JavaScript is, if you're going back and thinking about the car again, the engine, the interactivity of a site depends on JavaScript. JavaScript is what drives most single page web apps today. It can also be used to build web servers and backend. There is so many applications of JavaScript, it's ridiculous. I think you could probably just focus on JavaScript as an engineer and never stop learning and always have a job in engineering. To break it down, JavaScript deals with objects, arrays, and functions, something that's critical to learn as a front-end engineer, and it's something that can help you elevate your skills. So what I like to do and encourage anyone trying to get into development, build a button. I think that's the greatest place to start. Look at a single button and try to build it. It's going to be able to use HTML, you're going to need some CSS, and you're also going to want some interactivity. What happens when you click on that button? What happens when you click off that button? All those questions can be addressed with the technologies that I just talked about previously. Let's talk about frameworks. So each one of these technologies has its own framework. For instance, JavaScript has a framework called React, which is basically access to similar patterns and tools that makes it easier to use JavaScript. What I like to use is next.js. It's my go-to tool. It's got a lot of support. It's got a lot of people who are always updating and contributing. It also has a really cool conference that you can attend if you're lucky enough to go to. I think in the CSS world, the tool chain or the framework I like to lean on is something called Tailwind CSS. Tailwind CSS is probably one of the best frameworks in my mind because it really makes it more utility. It makes it easier to pick up CSS classes. This is something else we get into to implement that into your web apps. And then last but not least is something called Strappy. Strappy is kind of how you can get a backend for free and not having to worry about standing up your own backend. Easily be able to test data sets and data tables. You're also going to need some place to host it. So I definitely recommend looking to something called Vercel. Vercel is based off of React, and the creators are from Next.js. That's how you launch your code to production and get it out so the rest of the world can see. And last but not least, you're gonna probably look at GitHub. GitHub is something you call a version controlled system. Controlling, that's basically it. It controls the version of your code. If your code is in 1.1 or 1.2, GitHub is where you can maintain the code quality, do code checkups, ask other people to review it, and basically use that to connect to your production site to launch your code. Vercel and GitHub play very nicely with each other. I definitely recommend getting into it. So that's about it. That's the standard front-end developer package that I use and how I've been learning front-end development all of this time. And like I said, what I would do to get started, go over these technologies that we just discussed and try to build a button. Try to build one single button and launch it. I'll probably look at coming up with maybe another video of how I would do it, but I think that's a great place to start, especially if you're interested in something on the front end. It's something, a button, whole departments can be built around buttons and what they do, what functions they actually execute on. So I think building a button is a great place. Thanks guys for listening. Check back for more. I'm just going to be talking about more about my experience and where I'm trying to go next in my development journey. All right, we'll see you later. Bye.